How did the coffee do for you?
It feels perfect.
Yeah.
I'm just enough to
Feel strong.
We're gonna get started.
Dead deep.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're really excited to have these three incredible artists in conversation for our Meet the Artist series, which is every Thursday, if we can help it. Next week, we'll have, I'll do this announcement in the end. Today, we have Tim Carpenter, Jenia Fridlyand, and Raymond Meeks. I'm going to read the two artists to my left, their bios real quick, and we'll introduce them. My name is Sarah Danziger. Also, I'm the education coordinator, and you're in the Center for Photography at Woodstock in our little humble Kingston spot, about to be much bigger. Tim Carpenter is a photographer, writer, and educator based in Brooklyn and Central Illinois. He's the author of several photo books, among them A Month of Sundays, Christmas Day, Buck Pond Road, Local Objects, Township, Bement Grain, Still Feel Gone, Illinois Central, The King of Birds, and A House and a Tree. Local Objects was included in the 2018 exhibition American Surfaces and the Photo Book at the Museum of Modern Art, New York, and was listed for the Castle Photo Book Award in 2018. Carpenter received an MFA in photography from the Hartford Art School in 2012, and in 2015 co-founded TIS Books, an independent photo book publisher. He is a faculty member of Penumbra Foundation Long-Term Photo Book Program, serves as a mentor in the Image Threads Mentorship Program, and is a co-proprietor of Distant Zine. Carpenter's book-length essay, To Photograph is to Learn How to Die, was published by the Ice Plant in fall 2022. And Jenia Fridlyand is a photographer and educator based in New York City in the Hudson Valley. Her photographs and book have been exhibited in the United States and abroad. Fridlyand's book, Entrance to Our Valley, was shortlisted for the Perry Photo, Aperture First Photo Book Award 2017. And trade editions were published by TIS Books in 2019 and 2020. She's represented by Gallery Wouter van Leeuwen, Amsterdam. Fridlyand is co-founder of Image Threads Collective and is chair of the long-term photo book program as well at Penumbra Foundation in New York. She studied photography at the Centre Iris and Université Paris 8. Paris, and holds an MFA from the University of Hartford's International Limited Residency Program. Can we welcome these amazing artists to CPW? Thank you.
So I guess I got to kick this off. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks to everybody here. Probably like 20 years ago when I was like getting into this, I probably submitted to things at the very venerable Center for Photography at Woodstock and never got in. Probably they were making the right decision at that time. But anyway, I've loved the idea of CPW forever, for a long time. And just really excited about what's going on and what we got to see. We got to hint of what's going to happen here. So pretty amazing, and thank you all for coming out. But we wanted to tell you a little bit about why Jenia and I are together and why Ray, because as you noted, the couple things that I do, mentor through Image Threads, and I teach through the Penumbra Long-Term Photo Book Program. Jenia started both of those with friends, but so we teach together, we work together, we talk a hell of a lot, we look at pictures. And the same thing is true with Ray, who's been a friend of ours for now many years, is that I can say personally for that these are the two people with a few others who put the most pressure on me to work harder, to be better. And so I'm really excited to be with these two tonight. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we talk about in private.
Yeah, we are. So this is very, very, very informal. We have not, we've sketched, but we haven't really planned that well. And we invite, this is our own living room conversation, campfire conversation, whatever it is. And we welcome you all to at any point in time, because I know the relevancy of when something is talked about, to get clarity on that now, or else it's gone. So interrupt, ask questions, make comments, preferably kind ones. Anything that along the way we can answer something or clarify something, please feel free to interrupt us. Right?
No.
Except for the next maybe 2.5 minutes. maybe am I close enough to the mic to do this? Because I don't know if I can do this hands-free. So I did write a book, believe it or not. I thought it was going to take a long time, and then the world changed, and suddenly I had all this time on my hands to write something, and so I did. This book is called "To Photograph Is to Learn How to Die." Montaigne wrote an essay called "To Philosophize Is to Learn How to Die," so that's where I cribbed the title from. But anyway, I'm going to read. There's a section called a preamble. It won't take too long, so don't worry. Anyway, it starts with a quote from Paul Valéry. He says, "You are here, and later on you will no longer be here, and you know it. What is not corresponds in your mind to what is. This is because the power over you of what is produces the power in you of what is not. And the latter power changes into a feeling of impotence upon contact with what is. So we revolt against facts. We cannot admit a fact like death. Our hopes, our grudges, all of this is a direct, instantaneous product of the conflict between what is and what is not." A shot for courage. Okay, so this is me now, not Valéry. I'm writing in the early 2020s. The thoughts of many people are properly engaged with the historical and the topical, with politics and ideologies and the like, with events. My head is there too, but the constant pressure of the external in these years has, perhaps unsurprisingly, also led me more fully into the equally stormy internal. It is a violence from within that protects us from a violence without, Wallace Stevens wrote. The human imagination has something to do with our self-preservation and helps us to live our lives. Preserving the self has meant, in my case, making photographs, lots of them, in a conscious attempt to reconcile the conflict between what is and what is not. This vocation has shown me that such reconciliations, to the extent that they are even achievable, could never have happened in my head. What I seem to require instead is the friction of the materially circumscribed activity of photography, an activity that uniquely entangles the actual and the imaginary, and which results in a beguilingly inscrutable product, a new thing in the world that is itself a conditional accord between what is given in the real and what is possible in the mind. How shall we learn what it is our hearts believe in? Archibald MacLeish once asked. For me, the answer is working with and through the camera, a peculiar machine that is the most plainly useful thing I will ever encounter, which makes me curious about the nature of the desire to make things in this way. As a foundation, I have to believe that all people know the ache of the conundrum described by Valéry. Yet obviously only some of us, a small handful really, are compelled to make something of it, an aesthetic object in which a specific instant of felt life is evoked by the distillation of what is as subject matter and what is not as form. Of course, these two essential aspects of any particular picture or poem are inextricable as experienced by the viewer or reader. But in our activity as makers, we gauge subject matter and form as distinct facets of the whole, in order to shape with discipline and purpose. Such was the explicit effort of Stevens, who, over a long career, pondered the individual imagination as a creative, and also notably as a decreative, faculty that could in various ways manage, but never resolve, the tension between what is and what is not. This is an active capacity consequential both in poems and in life. If your goal is to make significant, enduring things, then, as far as I can tell, the whole deal resides in the quite rigorous use of your imaginative gift to get at the ineffable, what is not, rather than to portray what is already effable. Beware, though, because of our fundamental limitations, the aesthetic object, your work, will necessarily fail both the possibilities of your mind and the givenness of the world. I hope to persuade you not only that this is okay, but that one's humanity depends upon these near misses. Given all that, it's easy to see that the ineffable and the self are, for my purposes, synonymous. But what I'd like to suggest, by working backwards from the aesthetic object, goes further. That form and self are pretty much identical as well. We are nothing but form-making creatures, each of us a one-off, perpetually knitting inner to outer, while simultaneously unraveling it all, to fashion a kind of idiosyncratic, day-to-day, hour-to-hour livability of our given lot, which then somehow over time becomes a singular personhood. You might notice that, by analogy, self equates with what is not, and so we'll need to talk about that too. Shifting our attention outside, the stuff of reality is stubborn, recalcitrant. It will never meet us in the ways we might wish. Thus Valerie's revolt against facts. Fortunately, blessedly, we do have moments of vivid experience when interior and exterior come into a sort of tentative alignment, as if they're neurons between which a synapse has miraculously fired. Calling these epiphanies, we rejoice in the mere suspicion of transcendence. And, inevitably, we despair. The ephemerality of these revelations is a painful echo of our own mortality. Yet, strangely, it is this great brokenness of self that compels some of us to make an object out of such a moment. Not a thing that is about, as in recollection, but rather something that is the very cry of its occasion, the poem as it is, not as it was, as Stevens would have said. To do this, we find ways to short-circuit the cognitive feedback loop, the ceaseless calibration of the inexhaustible need within and the unrelenting resistance without, to arrest the existential frustration, if only for an instant. To adapt Iris Murdoch's formulation, we unself. This is Montaigne, earlier than Murdoch, on that topic. Cicero says that philosophizing is nothing other than getting ready to die. This is because study and contemplation draw our souls somewhat outside ourselves, keeping them occupied away from the body, a state which both resembles death and which forms a kind of apprenticeship for it. Or perhaps because all the wisdom and argument in the world eventually comes down to one conclusion, which is to teach us not to be afraid of dying. This is back to me. I believe that using a camera can draw us away from ourselves. That it is a meaningfully constrained way of thinking and knowing that enables us to conjure relationships among otherwise uncooperative earthly things, new and valuable correspondences which never actually existed. That these novel sets of relationships, called photographs, are useful because of the independent authority they possess to both defy and embrace impermanence, and to convey to other human beings the essence of a separate self's fleeting and often furtive connections with the obstinate thusness of it all. In short, that such pictures can get us about as close to the ineffable as our mortal shortcomings will allow. And what's more, working with the camera has the warrant to turn this whole fearful mess on its head, to demonstrate that humility in the face of the actual and the transient has the paradoxical power to effect a true and earned freedom, that it authorizes ultimately the affirmation of life, the final yes. This is what I want to tell you. To photograph is to learn how to die. That's that. Okay, so I'm going to show you some pictures, and then Jenia is going to show you some pictures. And, instruction here.
Can I just,
Please.
briefly say that this time last week, we walked out of here and went down to Diego's Tacos, Tim and I. Shortly after that, started talking about this week's talk presentation, and I offered to moderate the conversation between Jenia and Tim. Somehow I thought at the time, like, moderating has got to be much less unnerving than like presenting, but it's actually not. But I was thinking today about the things that, just like one quality I think that unifies the three of us, perhaps, and I think that we've all sort of mentioned like a certain gratitude that we have for the medium, and like the gift of sight, and how that our vocation sort of summons us to, actually demands of us to pay attention to the world, to focus our attention, to express our loves, to express what we're passionate about, to express things that seem irredeemable in the world, but that are, by way of process, possibly potentially redeemable. And the gratitude extends to, by way of process, by way of sending signals out into the world and like having them received and bounce back to us. They help define who we are as people. And so like there's this feedback loop that happens as an artist or a writer or a musician. I'm not a musician, so I'm assuming it's the same, where it's a call and response between you and the world. And it's almost like a bat sending out a sonar, and you get this faint image of something that comes back to you and says, yes, like go that way, you know? So I just want to say that, like, I think that's what unifies us. And I think you'll see, like in Tim's pictures, and if you hear him talk, and Jenia, you hear them talk, Tim will inevitably, you will see tears by the end of the night because he's so passionate about this that it just like overwhelms him sometimes, like the gratitude to like get to do this thing, get to be on the stage together, get to be in the presence of other people, and to share this thing that we love, and in a sense hope that we can all like somehow engage in process.
You hadn't shared the sonar metaphor yet, but I'm totally into it, because what I want to show you, can you help me? Is, yeah, go ahead and start, please. What I call it gauging yourself against the world, and I think the camera is the most amazing thing for gauging oneself against the world. And I'm going to show you a couple different examples of that, and I'm going to stay mostly quiet during this, but this is the first kind of big book I did with the ice plant, called Local Objects. And so I'll shut up for a second, but I want to tell you it's one way of gauging myself against the world, and I want to show you something which felt kind of different. So so what I would say, for just briefly to kind of juxtapose this to what I'm going to show you really quickly, is that I know this is going to sound like the dumbest thing in the world, but I learned it that if, especially the machine I was using, that the Mamiya 6.7, if you hold it vertically and you resolutely do not lift it to kind of edit the world, you keep it really, you get a lot of foreground. And okay, dumb observation, but like it kind of finally got into my brain, is like, that's the way I'm actually feeling. I'm feeling like a little bit distance from the world right now. And this is how I feel. And like all this dead foreground is kind of doing what I wanted to do. And that was kind of a big revelation for me. But what I would also say is that you might have noticed that most of the pictures, in many ways, there's not a lot of action around the edges. Like I was kind of also resolving things. Like I was seeing things as a little bit central, but far away. Again, I don't know necessarily I can say that that means anything, but like there was a kind of picture making that was going on in my head, and that kind of helped me understand. Just even realizing that kind of helped me understand what that was doing. The reason I bring this up is that I'm gonna show you something next that is quite the opposite from that, and it's quite deliberately opposite from that. Count. So this is a book that I did in collaboration with Ray and with Adriana Alt and Brad Zeller as well.
Tim, can I ask you real quick?
Yeah.
So so that resolving that you made when you decided to more foreground, right? Is that something that you made while you were making the pictures, realizing it, or is it something? Sorry. Is that a decision that you made while you were looking through the viewfinder after a period of time of photographing, or was that something that came back to you later as you looked at film?
It was iterative in that, but I probably made 3/4 or 80% of the pictures that eventually came into there, and it was kind of fun. It took. I know that sounds so dumb, but it took me a long time to kind of work through my skull that that's just what I was doing, and so then finishing out, it wasn't so, it was more like easing into it in a way, and saying, okay, I'm cool with that. But it was like the thing is like this is I talk to my students a lot, and I was like, this is, for me, it's a lot like what I understand psychoanalysis to be like. I've never seen a shrink, but what I think you're supposed to do is like look at what you're doing and then like kind of be objective about that subjectivity and kind of like see what's going on.
Yeah.
And so like that's what I love about photography is that you just do it. You just do it. And then like whatever, like every day, every month, 6 months later, a year later, I don't know, whatever, you look at the pictures and you kind of like remove yourself a little bit and from say, what am I telling myself?
Yeah.
Like, what am I saying to myself?
Yeah.
What is this other thing in me telling me about how I'm seeing the world? And if you can get really objective about that and get, like you can kind of start to see, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, in pictures, and learn from it. It's been really instructive to me to think that way. Which
Cheaper than psychotherapy.
cheaper than yeah.
So how would you describe what's happening in your brain when you're photographing? Is there like a zzz kind of thing, or?
You may have opened too big a question, but I don't mind. So I'm really into what phenomenology right now. It's Heidegger, but mostly this guy named Merleau-Ponty, who never became nearly as famous as like his friends Sartre and de Beauvoir. But anyway, I'm going to just keep this really quick and not go into that too deep. But what I'm really interested in is that I'm not so much interested in the semantic meanings of things in the world, like they're symbolic or they're linguistic meanings, but like what Merleau-Ponty would say is that everything in the world triggers a response in the body and in the mind, and it announces itself and it makes itself salient to us or not salient to us. And that's what I'm so interested in, is like, how do shapes and forms make themselves salient to me moving through the world? And that's what I'm really trying to get at. And I'm hoping we've joked about this, but I hope to really literally expunge symbolic meanings so much and really think about like what triggers us to make our way through the world in a specific way.
Yeah, but you don't think all that when you're photographing.
No, but I mean, but I think that the way that we work, and I know a lot of people in this room work, is that you're kind of just walking through and you're letting your body kind of do this thing, and you're just responding, and you're not trying to illustrate ideas that you have. That's
when you make the bad picture.
Right. Jenia and I have talked about this, but like William Carlos Williams nailed it when he said no idea but in things, because I wrote about this in my book. What I think he equally meant was no ideas in other ideas. Like if you go out with ideas about how the world is, you're done. If you think your projections of the world are right and correct, you're done. You're just going to illustrate them. When he says no ideas but in things, he means that you really got to interact with those things on their own terms without your projections on them and just let them be themselves, I think it's ultimately probably impossible, but it's the goal. It's the objective.
Well,
Justin.
still,
Yeah, please. Yeah, or music, but like literature is just music is just literature. Pop music is literature. Yeah. Um, you're right. I mean, I do like showing things on the wall, but like I'm a book guy for sure. And I think part of it is practical. Is like the pictures I make, they're not so much standalone things. You know, like they really need a cumulative energy, like or a cumulative kind of vision to show like what I'm trying to get at. But I do think I can also talk for hours before we. Control over much in life. When we write, it can show us kind of a formal resolution or a control of the world. You know, it's like this is getting really deep, but like you know, the Freudian death wish, which was applied to novel theory and to poetry theory, was that it's not that we want to die, but we want to die on our own terms. And a novel can, you know, like especially a romance novel can go off and all, but you want to bring it back. Like that's the desire, and I think that's the desire in books. For me, is like you want to show some control, and you want to show that you know that you can die on your own terms. The book can die, and the book can end on its own terms. So book form has just been really important to me to kind of like control that narrative a little bit. And I'm sorry I even use the word narrative because I actually kind of want to get away from narrative, but I want to control the experience a little bit. And that's about the best compact answer I can give to that because I could spend an hour or more. But so because I want to get to see some Jenia pictures, these are pictures from Township. I just want to show you, and I think it's going to be very obvious from the get-go. I was really thinking about a different protagonist, which was a different aspect of myself, and how the picture plane really expands against its edges, against their edges. I was really actually thinking of two to say literary characters. I was thinking the way that Brad Zeller wrote Lester B. Morris in House of Coats, and I was thinking of the way that Cormac McCarthy wrote Suttree. I was thinking of some people who'd gotten a little old. Those are pictures by Ray, by the way. I kept them in there. Ray and Addie. A person who had not fully given up, but was really close, you know, like maybe to giving up, and a person who was probably older than I am. But I was trying to figure out these aspects of myself, and so I wanted a much more confusing picture plane. I wanted things moving off the edge, things being jagged, the spaces being quite different, and I was just kind of trying to inhabit that. I even thought of literally myself like in an old, you know, an old Army Navy coat that was not warm enough, you know, like, and you have your shoulders kind of hunched, and what would that be like to have that world? So anyway, you know, just a really different way of trying to like figure out the picture. Now you may recognize that house was in the previous group. I still walk the same damn streets, but this is also important to me, is to keep going to the same exact places, but it's important to me if I keep going to the same subject matter, because then I can really think more about what's going on that's different inside of me. So I'd like to not vary my subject matter and think about that. I like to keep the subject matter rather consistent and kind of like try to figure out what's going on in me that's different from year to year, from day to day, from mood to mood, you know, from moment to moment, how things are going on with me. I've talked way too much and I want to see some Jenia pictures. So.
Is that, you think, like Morandi had the same impulse with?
Boy. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, keep the subject matter consistent and like paint what's different in you. Mm-hmm. That sounds really good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with it.
So I'm going to show two bodies of work, and I think I'm just going to let them run in succession. Before I start, I want to say what's similar about them, and then maybe afterwards I say what's different. So both of them were shot with a 4x5, same kind of same kind of film, same lens. And I'm saying it not because I love equipment, but because when I started using a 4x5, it just changed everything for me. And so the other thing about both of these is figuring out my relationship with a specific place. And also, I always think of projects as books in the end. So for me, it's very much like Tim was saying, cumulative energy. Yeah, I'll do it in a second. I just want to let it. Okay, yeah, it's okay.
I'm jumping the gun.
It's okay. I'm interested, I think, even more than pictures themselves, in the space that's between the pictures. So that, yeah. So this is the first one, and then I'll show the second one. Silent show.
Jenia, how important is that one picture of Lily when she's looking into the camera, as opposed to the other?
She's not quite looking into the camera. She's looking just past the camera. Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot when I was putting together the book, and I was thinking about like a cinematic quality to the flow of the pictures, and how it's really stops the flow when the character looks back at you
Yeah.
directly, and I didn't want that to happen.
So it was more important that she wasn't looking directly into the
Yeah,
camera, because
yeah.
had she been looking right through the lens, you wouldn't have.
No, for sure.
Okay.
Oh, and I should probably mention, so this has already been published as a book, and this other work, not yet. That's it. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
So bear in mind, those are all 4x5 view camera pictures made on a tripod. Right? Yes.
This is the thing that makes me the most insanely jealous about Jenia. She uses a 4x5 on a tripod better than I can use a handheld. More fluidly.
Take it.
Uh,
I think we can have the lights up, I think, at this point. And
You might just want to let it run through if it's, while we're talking
Yeah.
about the work. Yeah.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you what the difference if there is a difference in your mind in the picture making between Entrance to Our Valley and to the Cuba work?
yeah, so I was going to talk about the differences. So in the first case, I was just learning to use the 4x5. So I think, and I was photographing in a place that was kind of made officially mine, but it was a new place to me. And I had a lot of questions about how I ended up there. So I think the process of photographing there was kind of trying to answer those questions through photographing. And also I was with my family. So photographing was kind of part of, it was challenging, but it was part of daily routine life. In the second case, I kind of already felt that the camera was a tool that I could use for something else. And photographing in that particular place was different in that it's a very isolated place. Most of the time I was there was not even data network, so kids couldn't text me what's for breakfast. And I could understand but not speak the language. And it was just like every minute of the day was about making pictures. So that was really a really new experience for me. And I think that that certainly, yeah, that was a big difference. And another one, I was in a place where nothing goes according to plan. So it was learning to let go in some ways. And learning to how to make letting go useful or generative. So that would be, my kind of main difference.
The letting go part for me is especially evident in this work, and having looked at the previous body of work, because this work feels almost vernacular or like there's more. It's view camera, but somehow you've composed and then set things in motion again in this work. And they feel, not that the other pictures felt contrived, but I would say that in comparison, like these feel less contrived, almost as if like the picture kind of made itself. But I'm wondering, like, so letting go like feels like part of that release. And that's what I love about like your 4x5 view camera work is I don't feel the tripod, nor do I feel like the being inhibited by like putting a camera on a tripod, a view camera, which is working slower. Like it feels like you're still working fluidly. But I'm also wondering about like what that was for you to go from your home, a place of intimacy with people that you know, to like photographing in a foreign place without that sort of intimate connection to place. Like, how did you find your way? Like for me, when I have to travel and go someplace new, I have to find myself or find something familiar within that landscape to allow me access to picture it with some authority or some invitation. I don't know what to call it, but like to feel like I have access to it. So what was that for you going to Cuba what was that point that, I mean, I'm assuming you work similarly, like you have to have a point of access.
Okay, so the reason I started photographing there was that when I went there for the first time, it was in 2012 on a sort of a commission. I felt a sense of recognition there, which I think a lot of people who grew up in the Eastern Bloc could feel there. But the interesting thing that was not recognition that was visual or came through any of the five senses actually. So I was thinking about that for a while, like where does that come from? And once I felt that I had the camera, like I was, the camera sort of became part of me, it became my tool. And then I started traveling there to photograph, trying to, that was the impulse, trying to answer that question. So going there, I mean, it's a place with a lot of visual cliches. So how do I cut through that, or how, like, so I just, I started making landscapes in the beginning, no people, no kind of structures, nothing, and then slowly worked my way in to more populated areas. And only my last trip, I photographed in Havana.
I would see Jenia off before she would leave, and she would have 500 sheets of film going with her and come back with 500 exposed sheets of film. This is all processed by Jenia. So we'll talk about process later, but how, and then the view camera itself as an instrument. I'm calling it an instrument in your case. Some would call it a tool, that you play it like an instrument. How did it change your picture making? How does it alter your picture making? How is the view camera specifically an instrument that for you allows you to visualize the world, or render the world in a way that resonates with you?
I can only guess at the answer. So first of all, before I started using the 4x5, I absolutely hated the tripod. So for me, it was like so painful to just have to be on the tripod all the time. But I had to do it. So that changed something. So, I mean, when you have the camera on the tripod, it sets some limits. I think that's kind of working within limits, maybe.
Constraint.
Yeah, or constraints, right? That's helpful. I mean, the other thing is that the image is reversed and upside down, so your access to sort of the formal quality of the image are much more immediate. I mean, being under the dark cloth also separates you from, your subject matter. And what else is there? Oh, I mean, I think another very important thing is what's possible with the ground glass is to compose from the edges in, rather from like the viewfinder. I tried it so hard. It doesn't quite work. You're always composing from the center out.
Yeah. But you
and
have to actually move around when you're looking under a dark cloth. You have to like move your head
with
around.
an 8x10, yes, but not with a 4x5, not so much.
My eyes aren't so good.
Well, you have to, you have to be like far. Yeah.
But there's also a bit of not seeing that happens with the 4x5 and a ground glass and a dark cloth, where you've got light coming in underneath. So like you've got some glare coming off the ground glass, and there's still like a sweet spot in the center usually, right? Like, and so like there's a level of not seeing or seeing dimly that I think is important also.
Yeah, but I think I also try to squint.
So you don't see you see even less.
Yeah. Except for when I am focusing, but I do that with a loop,
Yeah.
specific.
I do that with I use a medium format digital camera now, and I do that with the viewer on the back, where I don't like to look through the viewfinder or like directly. I just want to see like the general impression of what's happening, because I figure out the balance of the composition the balance of the sky, and then I just stop down to make sure, I got everything. But like, for the same reason, I don't want to see everything. Because everything's right in front of me. I want to see, like, I want to have a sense of I want to use my imagination. I want to get excited. I want to kill it. Like the picture, I don't want to know too much. I want to like have enough information to want to make the picture. Like a good pair of sunglasses sometimes will do that. It'll make you want to take the picture.
Yeah. But also I think when you know too much about the picture, there's a tendency to make a picture that you already know, and the interest is to make a picture that you haven't made before.
It transforms to what's there.
Yeah.
Justin.
So we're not just stacking like in the lot of maps, but vertical pictures. There's stuff going on back in there, and it just makes them feel like they're made with a small camera, like they're alive, because the space is so deep in some of them. And there's so many verticals in here. It's really unusual to see that many landscapes in vertical. Who did that? Jack maybe?
Yeah, that term alive is to me what really resonates in this work, because for me with the tripod, there's that tendency to like lock it in vertically, lock it in, so it could, like lock
Do you use
everything
a ball head?
a bald head? Are you coming?
It's getting personal.
It doesn't matter. I still want to lock it in, and then what I realize is, okay, now I've stripped all the wildness from this picture. It's like I've tamed it. Like there was something as you walk, as you're like interacting in the world, like this thing is still escapable. It's not like locked down. And you lock it down, and then for me, it's always the quandary of like, how do I make this wild again? How do I caged it? How do I set it free? And you either, for me anyways, find a way to set it free, or you're just not so rigid in the process that you're not locking it down.
For me, the genius of the Valley pictures is that one could say, if one wanted to write a press release, you could say it's about gratitude and about finding a home. That would be the boring stuff. It's not descriptive of that. It actually enacts the tentativity, the contingency of gratitude. How quickly all this could be gone.
That's what I felt when I was
Right, exactly. I mean, like, and that's in the pictures, and that the composition of them says, this is a moment, and I'm happy. And happiness could be gone very quickly. It's fleeting and it's furtive, and that's what like you want a picture to do is to not only just say, yeah, this was a good time in my life, or this was this time in my life, but like to make you feel it, to make you own it.
It's also a shared common experience that as you look out in the world, I feel this, do you feel this too?
Yeah.
It's inviting a universal shared experience.
And then when the shift into Cuba pictures, it's a different kind of resolve. Like you're not at home, and the pictures thus are absolutely different. They enact a different kind of bodily experience in the world. Like a confusion, a fragmentedness that's different.
Yeah, I would say falling apart.
Right.
I'm realizing I've got 250 pictures. I have to go back and process this when I get home.
Yeah.
But I would also say, I would also say that, I think you really comment, but I'd also say there are more,
Should we halt for a second? Are we okay, Sarah?
Yeah. Oh my God, you can all hear that?
Yeah.
the context of other pictures, is really important.
I have a technical question. When you work with the 4x5, would you still make use of Polaroid film?
No, just film, 4x5 that
So basically, looking through determines how you frame the picture, not looking through, testing, evaluating, changing?
No, and for quite a few pictures in there, I'm not looking, I mean, there's something happening in the frame that I don't know actually what the picture is going to be because there's a person moving in the frame. So it has to be my best guess because the holder is in there, so I don't see, what's actually going to be on the film. And it's really exciting to come home with like all those 500 sheets and process them and see what's there.
Yeah. So we'll take the break now and we'll come back and be more conversation. We'll show you a few other pictures kind of based on where the conversation goes, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Okay, quick for you then.
There's some nav right back here.
Tell them that books are here, but also tell them that discount. Should we start off telling them books are here, but we'll tell them that they can spend code too?
Do you still have entrance? You don't have entrance, do you?
I have. A couple copies, because Ray brought his personal copies of some of our books, which are sold out or close to. Also, my publisher, the Ice Plant, did this really goofy thing. They made a discount code if you, because strangely enough, we sold out the first printing of the book I wrote. It's there's a second edition, but if you go to the Ice Plant website, that's what it's like. If you use the discount code Stevens, the last name Wallace Stevens. My publisher likes to make fun of me by making discount codes. I could just why couldn't it just be CPW? And he's like, no. So anyway, if you go there, actually the deal is like 10% off and free shipping. And that includes if you buy other books, not mine, which they have many that are awesome. So the Ice Plant website, you can use that Stevens.
Show that this book's sold out now. Is this book sold out?
Yes, so there may be a few special editions that are on the TIS website.
So maybe we don't really have a plan forward. Maybe we could talk about these two iterations of the book. These are both Entrance to Our Valley books. This was the book that Jenia made first. That's printed risograph on newsprint and was taken to the LA Art Book Fair where I first met Jenia, and she, unlike us, sold everything she had. And she was there, and that was to her a way of, I'll let you explain why you did that, how you made this, and
Okay.
yeah. And then this is a book that TIS published. Same book, slightly different pictures, similar sequence.
They're different, slightly different pictures. I mean, one of the biggest differences is that in the first book, all pictures are the same size. In the second book, the TIS version, I actually went into learning what the size on the page and its position can do to reading a sequence. So that's the main difference. The first one I made because I wanted to make a book. I was just out of Hartford. I had to make a version for graduation, but it wasn't quite there. And I also, right after graduation, I just wanted to be in class, so I signed up for a Riso printing class at SDA. And not thinking that I would be using it for that, I just wanted to learn about risograph. And then I tried printing a couple of my pictures, black and white, with the risograph, and I thought that was interesting. And then I was trying to find the right paper. So I ended up making this book, which I felt was that book. I made this an edition of 60 copies, and it did well. It was nominated for the Perry Photo Aperture First Photo Book Award, and yes. You want to talk about this?
I think it was production, right?
Yeah. To replicate, yeah.
Also, where the image didn't bleed through and show through on the backside too much. So you tried to maintain a lot of the material and the way the book feels in the hand. And
Yeah, I mean the side is almost the same. There's the tape binding it's bound very differently, but like visually, there's similarity. I mean, we're just trying to have achieve the same feel with different productions.
Yeah, but so this size though, since this was the beginning, what led you to that size, a tall vertical?
It's 1117, so it's the largest size that the risograph will take.
If
And I would-
13, 19, you would have gone 13, 19.
And that's where I would have started probably. But my initial idea was to do something like, like shorter, like 15.
Yeah.
But when I saw that page, like the image on that page, when I saw that size, I was like, this is the right size.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna kind of,
It's hard to imagine them smaller, like so much to see, to look into the picture.
well, the picture, I printed the pictures this size, they would have fit like in a shorter book.
Mhm.
It's just that the feel of the page it feels different, so.
Yeah. And in terms of the number of pictures in this book, how many pictures are there? There's,
The first one is 40 plus, I
Yeah.
think, and the second one's 30.
and so, but then why not 60 pictures or 70 pictures? Or why not 15 pictures?
Well, I think you need the way I think about it, you need you should try to have the least number of pictures that you need to create a world that's not falling apart, something that's self-consistent.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could do it with that many pictures.
Yeah.
The first, every time you make a version of or something, and I finally got.
Yeah.
But I think like for Cuba work, I think my edit is for twice as many pictures for now. I
Yeah.
think I'll be able to cut down, but it'll end up being more pictures. I feel, I don't know. if
It's going to be a lot more pictures.
Also, there's further than you might want.
That's true. You don't have to be worrying about it. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Okay. It's going to be similar with yours, like just quickly, like talk about trim size and the number of pictures in this book.
I made footage book. So, so Mike and Trisha, Slack and Trisha Gabriel, who are the guys plan, I given
them the maquette. And it took about a year, like almost a year before we met, before the New York Art Book Fair. And I cut maybe 10% of the pictures, and I had a new maquette like in my bag. Also, like I'm sweating profusely because I'm meeting a potential publisher. Like I'm so nervous, and they're like, "All right, I think we want to make this, but we're just wondering if this could be a little shorter." And I was like, "Ching!" I pulled it out of the bag, and they're like, "Great." The edit and sequence stayed the same, and I had made it conscientiously. I had made it to fit signatures, and that, by the way, I think editing to signatures is a really good editing tool to get yourself down to multiples. So, but the one thing and this was mostly Trisha, she's like, I just think it needs more white space, and I think they only gave 15% more than what my maquette was, but like suddenly, that's why you have to collaborate with people, because they can help you make these decisions that you would have never thought of. Trisha Gabriel her day job is to work for DAP, which is Distributed Art Publisher. She's a genius at like figuring out how to retail a book, like what it means and how it feels in retailer space. This is something that's really important, it's not where my head is. And to have her like saying these kind of things and is really super important. Also, they picked a picture for the front. I was just like, that is the least impactful picture in the entire book. But I was also really proud of it. I was so proud of them for saying that we feel good enough about this.
Or even to put a picture on the cover.
Or even put a picture on the cover.
Consideration that a lot of publishers are.
But you have to work with other people to get out of your own head and just have them have some other ideas and yeah.
What was the object size of the original maquette?
Slightly smaller than that. Yeah, so there was less white space.
Bigger and added white space.
Less white space, so I think we kept the image space size the same. This was 2017, so I'm an old person and I forgot.
Just thinking about how with Jenia's first version and second version, we can see that difference. So I'm trying to imagine.
It wasn't significant enough to it was more about the white space rather than the image size, which I think stayed.
Yeah, but it's also like literary size, right?
So I have to tell you, one of the proudest moments, Mary Fry, who was one of my teachers at Hartford, after I gave her the book, she wrote me an email. She's like, it feels like a hymnal. I'm an atheist, but like, man, that made me very happy to be thinking about like just that idea of like, that was really,
a song, but
yeah.
okay, I think maybe we'll look at another body of work or two, and I'd like to talk about process for both of you. All three of us, for the most part, have our toes in analog still in some way. Jenia shoots almost exclusively film 4x5, a little bit of 6x7. Tim's working 4x5 and 6x7. I'm curious. Go ahead and cue something up if you want.
Well, instead we need to, so we should,
Let's talk about 4x5. Sure. Yeah. So Tim's process is to photograph in with film, either 4x5 or 6x7, to have the film process at a lab,
I do.
to
My
scan
ultimate shame.
to scan your film. You occasionally make prints, some gelatin prints for exhibition. But for the most part, you're scanning directly from film and then doing modest movements in Photoshop.
Very modest.
Yeah, with a blunt instrument, you can say, right?
The sledgehammer.
And then working from there as a digital file.
Yeah. But what I would want to back up and say is that I mostly walk around the world with a handheld.
And again, owing to my jealousy of how Jenia is able to walk around the world with a 4x5, is but there's been occasions, not every time, when I find something that I'm interested in that's speaking to me, but then I'm like, the handheld is not doing what I want it to do out of this, and simply because sometimes just the movement up, and your lines going all askew and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, then this is when I trot out the 4x5, So this is one particular, obviously this is makes perfect sense because this is a relentlessly vertical topic, right? A grain elevator. My dad didn't work on this elevator. He worked out in the fields that brought their grain into this town. So this is my dad's hometown. This is still an operational elevator. My dad and mom were friends with the people who run it. So they said, yeah, you want to picture this? You want to take pictures of this? Sure. They were confused, but they're like, you have to wear a hard hat. And I got to tell you, the most comical thing in the world is wearing a hard hat below a dark cloth. You're in a really strange situation.
Yeah.
Fortunately, but this is really active. And my dad, because also you have to realize in the Midwest, like the wind is whipping around tall structures. My dad has his toe on the tripod, on one of the legs of the tripod, and he's looking out for the grain trucks that are coming in because this is active season. So this is very collaborative with my father, as many things are, but super collaborative. Also, my dad shoots slide film, so he'd be like, hey, maybe a half a stop change. Like he would look up the sky, and I would certainly, then I would meet her because I can't do, and it's like, yeah, you're right, anyway, but it's Tri-X, so who cares? So, but this was a very collaborative thing, but the verticality of this required just the movement available in the 4x5, and that's why I had to switch over to it. And I've done that other times, but it was finding something and then realizing your machine was not going to do what you wanted it exactly, but there was another machine that could. He is. He's shot. There are 20,000 slides, mostly of trains, but a lot of us kids and like other things too. Yes, almost it's still exclusively slide film.
So for you, if you're ultimately, for the most part, working with a digital file, because you're shooting film, you're having it processed, you're scanning the film, and then you're digitizing it, and then you have the ability to move it in PDFs, edit, sequence, etc. Why not just shoot digital? What is it that a film camera, whether 4x5, I understand 4x5 movements for vertical subjects like this, but why only a 6x7 as opposed to, you have a digital camera too?
I do now. In COVID time, I decided I should buy one. But so I would say the reason is I make, this is not going to sound relevant, but it will be in this. I make my money entirely outside of photography. So when I'm in New York, not in Illinois, I have to work pretty conscientiously to support myself and to support buying all this film and everything. So what I pick my battles, I guess is what I want to say, is I shoot on film, I have other people process it, LTI never makes a mistake. Then for me to work through it, I do scan it at home, and then it gives me the ability to manage through a lot of this. And then I winnow, I figure out what it is, and then I get one of the two of you to help me in a dark room, as we know, and then we get in, and I'll make some silver gelatins. But my winnowing process, my editing process is in that digital, because it's practical and it's cheap and it's time, it's time sensitive. Like I can do all that. But listen, if I were 22 and I didn't care, I'd still be printing everything.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of practicality stuff, but to get to manage it and then figure out what I really want to silver gelatin, that's just helped me a lot to kind of. I'm going to slightly change the topic and just tell you, because you're seeing a really important thing in this book right now, is that I dug these pictures. I was super happy with the negatives and with the prints and everything, but I thought, well, I want to relate one thing. Vis-a-vis Jenia, these are pretty static. I'm just more formal with the way I use a 4x5. That's the way I am. Cool, but that's the way I am. I thought that if this was made into a book, it would just be sort of a catalog. Boom, boom, boom. So I wasn't really feeling it. I didn't know how to feel it, but we decided to make this into a book that would accompany Township. And Ray said, "Well, I'll design this and I'll figure it out." And so he did two things. One was pretty subtle, is he altered the size of the images. Some of them were like 10 or 15%, almost so you can't tell. But this is the major move. Right here, this is what convinced me of everything. Is that Ray took this. So this is the beginning of the book, but the same thing is true of the end of the book with a different picture. The more solid picture that you see on the right, that's the actual neg. And then Ray took it and just obviously screened it, flipped it. So you enter this world in that way, you get all my pictures, and then you exit the world in the same way. And suddenly that whole thing made sense to me. It was that's a book, and now I get what it is. Again, I would have never thought of this in a million years. You need somebody outside of you to kind of look at this thing and say, here's how we can bring this thing alive in a way that you're not seeing it yet. So,
I mean, I found it in old books, old engravings where the relief is on the other side. It's like, okay, well, this will feel like it kissed the other page and then left an impression of it. So, but I'm not quite clear on what film, loading film into the camera, maintaining all this film, bringing this film back with you, dropping it off, getting it back, making contact prints on your scanner, what that process affords you. Sorry, I'm not talking. What that affords you versus shooting a digital file, not having to scan, not having to process. It's all right there. And then you have all this latitude with this digital file. It's a raw file. You can make it color, you can make it black and white, you can. So
all I can tell you is, okay, so we put this out in 2017. So this was just made where I was in the world at that time. I do have a DSLR. I like it. I wouldn't say there's any moral or ethical opposition to doing what you're saying. Part of me is just, I know, it's relying on what I know how to do, and feeling comfortable with that. I hope to one day do these things in color.
Yeah.
Sure.
But for now, you're still a photographer who relies on a camera, a lens. So
I will tell you, I'm a dumb guy. I will mess up anything you give me, which means that so it was really good for me to have Tri-X sheets and have Tri-X rolls, even though the sheets are 320 and the rolls are 400.
It's forgiving film. It's a lot.
But so they're rated for some bizarre reason. They're rated differently as film. But I could set my meter at 250 and know that I was going to get good shit out of them.
Yeah.
So my meter never changes. My cameras never change. Nothing changes, and I have to have it. For me, I have to have it. I can't change stuff, and because I will mess stuff up the first chance I get.
Yeah.
For me to simplify, and this is also what I was saying. To simplify the subject matter is also simplify my meter.
Yeah.
Because then I can feel much more confident about not.
You have a much more simplified relationship with your instrument, with your camera.
Exactly. And I don't have that yet with the DSLR, which confuses the hell out of me because it has too many things to do on it. Like I don't even know. I'm not using 5% of this camera, or 1% of the camera.
So I'm wondering if it slows down. Is that, yeah, no, the opposite.
Oh, well, slowing down is good.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that if you're photographing in film,
Yeah.
and you're not using a tripod, but you have this sort of jealousy of wanting a tripod, what does that do? That slows you down. And digital is like this super fast, all done, like you say, you're writing a blah, blah, blah. And it seems like when you talk about all these different things and the way you think, maybe that is more in tune with your process in a holistic way.
I totally agree. I'm on record as saying, if somebody said, "What if you could wish one thing?" My first wish is world peace. The second one is that Tri-X was made in 220 rather than just 120. Because if I was able to load and unload half as often, I would be like the happiest guy on the planet. But I do think that like shooting 10 pictures and then having to lick the thing and do all this, like even with handheld, you're slowing down. Like you're like, all right, I got something really good and I'm on 9. What do I want to do? Do I want to do this and do this? And now no, I got to reload and all. Like I think all these time elements are super important to this process and thinking, making decisions, making like hard decisions in the moment sometimes.
I do shoot almost all digital now, and the thing that I miss more than anything else is shooting film, because it's when you're so focused on something that's in front of you, and then you have to stop to load the film, that you're aware of the periphery.
Yeah.
And like that informs so much of what's going on around you also. And so sometimes you end up shifting, or you see something out of the corner of your eye that's like you would never see because you're so focused on what's in front of you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for Jenia, like you load your own film, you process your own film, you make your own contact prints, you make your own prints, you make test prints, you scan your own film. What is process for you in terms of, because none of us work towards a known subject. So the beginning of a project for you, the inception of a project, does it begin with a question? Does it begin with a curiosity? Does it begin, how are you initiating a project?
Well, it's so far it has been having a question related to a specific place. I don't know.
So we should look at pictures of Israel, maybe.
I mean, it's going to be, well, I mean, sure. I'm
Jenia shot for the first time or second time? First time in Israel?
I saw one twice so far. So these are few pictures from 2 trips that I made this 22. All the things that I was thinking in the beginning are kind of wrong already. I think this project is going a lot harder for me than the previous ones, for understandable reasons.
Harder, but not in a way that you're thinking there's nothing, I should just abandon this because.
Oh, no. I should, I think I need to go back to the 8x10. That's where I am right now.
So when in doubt, go bigger.
Yeah, but it's, so it's going to this particular place. And I mean, the process of photographing is trying to make a picture that I haven't made before, which is, in a way that this new place will teach you how to do.
In a way that you haven't made before because you're photographing a place that you've never been before.
Or, they're parallel but related processes. It's like learning something and making a picture of it. It's like, or it's actually the same process.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a destination in terms of a picture you want to make?
Oh, no.
I mean, a type of picture you want to make, like the way you compose and put together a picture. Is there like an ideal way that you would compose a picture or interact with it in the world that when you get there, you'll know it, like, okay, now I've done it.
Right. It's not only a picture that I haven't made before, it's probably a picture that I haven't seen before. So there's no way of knowing what that would look like.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's like what is a good picture? I can talk about that.
Right.
So for me, it's one that, like it's a question of balance, and the balance is kind of on the scale of familiar to unfamiliar. Like if everything is familiar in the picture, it's a cliche, and if nothing is familiar, there's absolutely no way of connecting to it. So I mean, there has to be the right balance, but also a balance of form and subject matter. And it's again like it has to be the right balance for that picture, because if you're overwhelmed by some subject matter, it's not an interesting photograph.
Mhm.
And if it's, it's all about form. I mean, for me, it can be interesting, but for me, that's not where the interest of photography is.
Yeah.
So
So it's not enough to go to a place. You're not you're not a photographer who's interested in finding some obscure place where like very few people have photographed to make a picture that no one's seen before. It's not about
yeah, I mean, that's
content
a
or subject in that way.
yeah. It's just that pursuit is definitely formal.
Yeah.
But how do I get there? So I think my way of getting there has been to going to places where I feel something,
Yeah.
a certain connection or a certain interest, or it's almost always more easily stated as a question.
Mhm.
And yeah, in photographing there, you have to set some parameters.
Yeah.
for it to,
I like to think Toni Morrison said writers go to the places where they expect to make contact. And I think photographers are the same way. Yeah. That's how I operate. Where can I go, have access, make a connection, express that connection in a way that other people might feel it, might experience it. So for you, like Israel, Cuba, like are these places where, is that true for you? Like you go to a place where you anticipate you might make contact?
well, just speaking in the terms that I was using earlier, I think, if you're looking for a balance of familiar and unfamiliar in the picture, you have to have something familiar
Yeah.
that's there.
Right.
Yeah. So, so there has to be some sort of connection.
Yeah. I also think of it in terms of like, we're up here talking about photographs and decisions that we make and intuition. The same can be said for a hiker on a trail who comes to a fork and has to decide to go left or right, I just totally lost track of what I was going to. Analogy.
Right.
About what you had said previously, going to Cuba, that there was an element of recognition, and that from the way you described the photographs, that at first you were photographing a little bit like hidden from the milieu of but gradually you got closer and closer into like subjects of the nature of people and the dancers and things like that. Is that something in line of what you're describing in terms of finding form that you're trying to capture? I'm trying to stay on the same lines of what you're talking about right now, but I'm seeing it as that it doesn't come easy, and that at first you almost have to kind of be tentative and find your way in, but that you really kind of are gravitating towards assimilating yourself into the cultures a little bit.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned, what I said earlier, had more to do with the preconceptions that I have, like visual preconceptions that I was trying to work against. Because if you go to a place in which you've seen a lot of pictures, it's like you're really kind of pulled toward making yeah. And it's hard to see beyond that necessarily. So something that was the landscape in Cuba is absolutely stunning and something that I definitely haven't seen before. But I also think landscape is such an integral part of culture and I think I mean, just speaking of body being in the world, you know, like difference between my childhood and Cuba is, I was like 10 or 11 years old the first time I tried a banana. And like living in just trying to imagine growing up where you always like, no matter what happens, what else happens, you always have access to this like natural sugar. Like you have to grow up a different person. One of my trips was during mango season, and I tried a mango in season. It was like the most sweet, naturally sweet thing I ever tasted in my entire life. So yeah, so it's just like, yeah, there's a cultural difference, you know.
So what I was getting at was that decision to go to Israel to make pictures is a let's call it a right turn. Why? Like, what is it that you, in terms of contact or a connection of some kind, what is it you're anticipating there, or do you know yet?
I had I also traveled there before, like without camera, not photographing. And I had also sort of a specific feeling that's kind of the type that I had in Cuba. And it, like the best words I could find for it was genetic claustrophobia. And so there was this, and then there was traveling to the north of Israel, which felt completely different. There was something there in the landscape that touched me in a way like, okay, I thought combining these two things, I can, this is maybe where I can start. I think after 2 trips, I feel like I have absolutely no idea what I'm even thinking anymore. and I feel like the place is pushing back much harder than any other place I've ever photographed. And so of course it makes me, so I need a larger camera.
Yeah, but so then that makes me wonder about a larger camera. So that makes me wonder about, like, I mean, the opposite of that, maybe not the opposite, would be like Tim's way of going back to Illinois to make his pictures. You don't really photograph other places. I mean, now that you have your digital, you have a little bit of, that's around a little bit, but sorry, I didn't mean to, maybe that wasn't disparaging, was it?
No,
But,
not at all.
I'm a photographer.
Can we look at
I have a degree.
Can we look at some putzing? Maybe?
Yeah. And so, what was I getting to?
I don't know. She's choosing now. She's taking over the computer.
So you tend to return to the place. We talked earlier about like Mirandi and you returning to the same place to make the same pictures. But I remember if we look at or if you look at Ancien Regime.
Not that one. Sorry.
Okay.
This is meant to be the flexibility, but either box.
Well, no, but we're talking about putzing now. What do you want?
Ancien Regime.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there was specifically, you went back and you made pictures there. And as you always do, you go back and you make pictures. But you showed me a specific edit that to me really spoke, like I started to think about Atche. I started to think, we've gone from putzing around to Atche. I started thinking about Atche and the way that like his pictures of Paris felt singular to me. And they felt like, and your pictures of Illinois here, there was a shift of some kind. There was a turn of some kind that I related to your commitment to a place that this place doesn't, like all places, doesn't offer itself easily. Like you have to invest in the place. You have to earn that privilege, we'll call it. And then it starts to reveal itself in a way to you that it wouldn't the normal passerby or somebody who didn't look intensively and spend intensive time with focusing their attention on the way people live in a specific place at a specific time. I'll call it that. So like,
this is unique among what I've done in that the impetus was different. Because so when this is true in many parts of the country, but true in Central Illinois is like July, August, even up through Labor Day, there's so much water in the air, like it's so humid, and that everything is refracted, and you can't tell a sunny day from a cloudy day necessarily, and the shadows are neutered, and like it's just this feeling, and also when you walk out, suddenly you're sweating and all this kind of stuff, but it has a specific effect on Tri-X and probably other films as well, but that's what I was vibing off of like first, and I was like, I really love these blown out skies, and this is hubris, but I was like, they look like Ache, I mean, it's terrible hubris, but still, I thought that. And so I started to think about him and, the pictures. And I was like, this is, what he did was, in my mind, was sort of to juxtapose. So he never used the phrase the ancien regime. That was Sarkowski and Maria Morris Hamburg. But I like this idea, the order that's going to stay forever versus what's changeable, and it's mostly the lands, the trees and the grass and everything is like that's going to outlast us, but these little buildings we build, those are very changeable. So anyway, I started okay, well that's my new avenue into thinking about this and thinking about it. And so it was like 3 different summers where I was like, okay, so the first summer I got a hold of it, second summer I was like, I'm into it, third summer I kind of like rounded it out. But you have to, it's one of those things you had to wait for the humidity. Like you couldn't just do it whenever you wanted to.
Yeah. You
kind of got to wait for the world to do its thing.
Yeah.
And you do it. So like, it was a really good feeling for me to be like responding to these conditions of the world. And that was the driving kind of thing rather than anything else. So.
Okay. So that kind of blows my theory.
What was your theory?
Well, it wasn't really a theory, but it's just I just know that when I'm going through a place, when I'm experiencing a place for the first time or consecutive times, the picture I'm most likely to, the scene or whatever it is that stops me to get out and make a picture is the same thing that most photographers would stop and get out and make a picture of. Mm-hmm. And until you are in a place long enough that that there becomes this dialogue between like you and the place that I don't think your theory is wrong. Because it's the same damn pictures as are in local objects or as in anything else. Yeah, I mean, the same damn places. But it was the heat. I mean, this is bodily. This is, you in a tank top and you're like, you're wet and you're feeling about this and you're miserable. You don't even want to be outside. Yeah. This is why I think photography is so different from painting. It's so different from poetry. It's different from everything else, is that this thing is, even if it's on a tripod, or whatever, this thing is attached to you. This thing is with your body in the world. What you smell and what you hear and what you feel and the surface you're walking on, these all manifest themselves in the photograph. And I don't think that's true of painting. And I don't think it's true of drawing. I think this is a very unique medium this way. And these pictures these pictures are sweaty. These pictures are very lush. They just felt to me that way. And and that's what I really liked about them, is they felt verdant. Yeah. They felt, things that I had not, in ways that I had not really thought about pictures otherwise. And that was the unifying thing about them, But most of the things that you described in the making of that picture are subjective and don't find their way into the final picture, except that you had an experience and you will make an expression of that experience by way of the negative.
Yeah.
And you want that negative to reflect not necessarily what was in front of the camera, but also the way it felt.
Right. And the second overlay was then when I got the Ajay idea, was like to think about this man, the ephemerality, the temporality of the man-made thing and the other thing that's going to rule after we're gone. Yeah. That kind of helped me. That was a secondary kind of thing to think about. Yeah. To overlay it, I guess, to think about how to edit it. Yeah.
But how are we doing on time, Sarah?
Going way over.
Are we over? Oh, okay. Okay, just to wrap up then.
Or have questions.
Abrupt ending, or to have questions. I wanted to come back to Jenia real quick for the process. Your process really informs for you so much of the end result, your interaction with the work, the way the work has the potential by way of process to start to inform back to you what the work wants to become. Am I right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. But the way I think about it is, making a picture is such a compressed act in time. And I feel like I'm just through processing the film, which is kind of the same for every picture you make, you're trying to put time back into it. And I mean, of course the same for printing. It's like the time you spend with the image is also, it's a way of understanding it, and a way for me also understanding of how to use it in a book eventually. And
Oh, that's
just
beautiful, yeah.
learn, it's a
Putting
process
time
of
back
learning.
into it. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. Are there any questions, or do we want to get out into the cold? It's really cold out there. You want to stay here as long as you can. All right. Thank you all for bearing.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks. No, I couldn't facilitate that. Thanks everyone for coming out. We will be releasing the next few months calendar very soon, so keep an eye on for that, please. Next week we have Tanya Marcuse, who will be here at 5:30. So we would love for you to join us again next week. Any other announcements? All right. If you have any questions, feel free to come ask a staff member. And thank you all for joining us on what has turned out to be a very monumental day in CPW's 45-year history. We signed, Brian signed and got the keys for 25 Dedrick Street, which is, you can see it through this window during the day. It's a very exciting building. It's 40,000 square feet. These artist talks will have a little bit more space in the future, as well as many other exciting events and things that we'll be offering. So thank you for joining us tonight, and stay tuned. And thank you to the artists. Yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jenia. And thank you, Ray. That was fantastic. I can't wait to go home and watch it. Bye, y'all.